Tonight, the sprint to the finish, the LNP officially launches its election campaign, the final plank of its youth crime policy. Sydney puts on a rousing royal welcome, handshakes and hugs as the King and Queen work their magic, creating memories for young and old. 2 people killed and a third fighting for life after a horror crash north of Brisbane. Kamala Harris brings the star power while Donald Trump attacks her with a vulgar slur. Caught on camera, a motorcyclist performs dangerous stunts on the M1. And the small Brisbane company looking to supercharge the future of aviation.
Live from Brisbane, 7 News with Samantha Heathwood.
Good evening. By this time next week, Queensland could have a new government and premier. Tonight, the man who wants the top job revealed the last part of the LNP's plan to tackle youth crime. David Crisafulli promising detention with purpose, but refusing to be drawn on solitary confinement.
A welcoming party outside.
We say pro-choice!
We say no choice! And a rousing reception inside.
Take me far away.
He spent years carving out his path to power. David Crisafulli is calling his fight for victory the fight for change.
To vote for a fresh start for Queensland.
Launching his official campaign with the party faithful and the families of crime victims, including the relatives of murdered Ipswich grandmother Violene White. Her husband Victor and daughter Cindy endorsing him for Premier.
Adult crime, adult time. Yeah. It's a promise I made Victor sitting at his kitchen table. And mate, by the end of the year it will be law if Queenslanders vote for change.
Also announcing a new punishment system for youth detention facilities.
Today, I can announce detention with purpose.
Targeting violent outbursts against staff.
There will be minimum isolation periods imposed for youth who commit assault in detention.
He denies it's solitary confinement and says stakeholders will be consulted.
A few minutes to cool down after assaulting someone doing their job is not on and will change.
Children will also have privileges such as TV, computers, games or social time for good behaviour or removed for bad behaviour, which includes failing to do schoolwork.
If the state is taking over the responsibility of their care, we must ensure we use their time to become better people, not better criminals.
What this bloke's very good at doing is taking a very complicated problem and pretending to have a simple solution.
After almost 4 years since becoming party leader, David Crisafulli could now be on the cusp of history. Determined to deny Labor a 4th straight term in power.
Well, David Crisafulli has not set any timeline for the changes or targets for staff numbers at youth detention centres, but he says there'll be widespread consultation, especially about the length of time a young offender would be isolated for. That's going to stir debate about whether it should be minutes or hours. The United Nations defines solitary confinement as 22 hours or more a day without any meaningful human contact. Now, there are 3 youth detention centres in the state, including one in Townsville. The opposition leader arrived in the city a short time ago. He has been here 3 times throughout the campaign, and that's because there are 3 crucial seats here the LNP needs to win. Meanwhile, Stephen Miles went to the markets in Redcliffe and Milton today with Labor candidates but made no new announcements. Both leaders preparing for a big sprint to the finish line. Sam?
Elena Wapp in Townsville for us tonight. Thank you. Well, to breaking news, and 2 people have been killed and 1 person is fighting for life after a head-on crash on the Jaguar Highway. It happened just north of Weymoran. The Life Flight Rescue helicopter has ferried 1 person to hospital. It's unclear what caused the crash. The Forensic Crash Unit is investigating. Well, flag-waving, cheering crowds have turned out to greet King Charles and Queen Camilla for the start of their royal tour. They lined the streets, many waiting for hours to catch a glimpse of the royals. Some had travelled from halfway around the world. The King declaring today he's always cherished Australia.
Sunday morning and a visit to church, but the crowds were undertaking a little worship as well. King Charles and Queen Camilla on the first event of their 6-day tour, St Thomas's Anglican Church, North Sydney. The Sunday school kids flagging the enthusiasm to come.
How was that? You just met the King.
It was so fun! I loved it so much!
All right, one by one.
I loved it so much, it's so nice.
In the church where his great-grandfather laid the foundation stone 100 years ago, they prayed for Charles's health before the King signed their copy of the King James Bible, First Fleet Edition. Outside, the capacity crowds could pass their best wishes themselves.
I'm sorry there wasn't room for you in the church.
Oh, we would have definitely come.
For 30 minutes, their majesties worked their magic.
G'day, you've actually greetings from Tasmania.
It was monarchy madness. They shook hundreds of hands.
King Charles, welcome to Australia.
Where do you rate that? What do you think, meeting one?
10 out of 10.
That's on.
Waves of emotion, moving some to tears.
It was so thrilling. It was overwhelming and I started to cry.
Start to cry.
The crowd stretched for a shot. Phones were high, spirits too.
We've been here since 5 o'clock this morning. Yeah.
Worth the wait then?
Oh, absolutely.
I didn't expect to feel anything much, but I did. A lot of people. I didn't actually realise I was a monarchist, but I am.
They brought gifts. One, packets of kangaroo jerky.
Do you think he's going to love eating kangaroo, or is he going to be a bit...
He had a bit of a love with me, said, that's my kangaroo, yummy.
This woman travelled 9,000 kilometres from off the South African coast.
Exactly 15 hours. So
That is a really long trip.
absolutely.
You must really love the King and Queen.
Absolutely. We love the King and we love the Queen.
There were protesters, held far back and far outnumbered. Some just carried away on enthusiasm. Security ever present.
This is the present for Queen Camilla. Okay. Was it? That's books. Okay, thank you.
Just before midday, their majesties moved off. The next engagement, a visit to State Parliament to mark the 200-year anniversary of the Legislative Council. It's his 17th visit to Australia, but his first as King, saying he couldn't be happier to be back.
What a great joy it is to come to Australia for the first time as sovereign and to renew a love of this country and its people, which I have cherished for so long.
He presented Parliament with an hourglass gift to time political speeches and even hinted time may see Australian politics change too.
Democratic systems must evolve, of course, to remain fit for purpose, but they are, nevertheless, essentially sound systems.
Outside Parliament, he was back to the crowds, where several thousand had gathered for a glimpse. Next meeting, an open arms greeting for the state's Governor, Margaret Beazley, followed by the new Governor-General, Sam Mostyn.
So today was a day all about church services and visiting Parliament, church and state, but it was also the first one of these. The term walkabout now banned as inappropriate. They call them opportunities to meet the people.
Their majesties couldn't have met more. They've turbocharged the meet and greet. Casual, intimate, a royal audience for the masses. Chris Reason, 7 News.
So what's next for the King and Queen? Annie Puller is at Admiralty House. Annie, how are the royals spending the night?
Sam, the King and Queen are taking a much-needed break tonight, resting and recuperating after wrapping up a big day of public engagements. Considering the King's cancer diagnosis, doctors have tried to facilitate as much downtime as possible during this tour, and it seems their majesties are enjoying a bit of R&R, soaking up the warm weather here in Sydney, strolling the grounds of Admiralty House late this afternoon and taking in those incredible harbour side views. Now tomorrow, the royal couple will be jetting off to the capital, undertaking another very busy day of events.
Thank you, Annie. Now to Rob Scott in Canberra. Rob, what's on the itinerary there tomorrow?
Samantha, they're only here for about 6 hours, but they are packing a lot in. They arrive around midday and it's straight to the War Memorial where the King will lay a wreath, the Queen a floral tribute. And it's there the public will get their first chance to greet the pair. Their Majesties will then receive a ceremonial welcome on the forecourt of Parliament House before attending a reception hosted by the Prime Minister and his fiancée. It's then off to Government House where the Queen will attend a discussion on family and domestic violence hosted by the Governor-General. The King, meantime, will hold an audience with the opposition leader and a separate meeting with Anthony Albanese. From there, he'll visit the CSIRO National Bushfire and Research Laboratory, meeting with scientists and firefighters. Their Majesties will then regroup at the National Botanic Gardens before returning to Sydney, ending a lightning trip to the capital. Samantha.
Thank you, Rob. Well, a 5-year-old boy has suffered serious injuries holidaying in Cairns after being hit in the head with a rock. Let's go to Jordan Quinn in the newsroom. Jordan, the boy was on a tourist train.
Yeah, that's right, Sam. He was actually holidaying from Japan with his family. They were travelling back to Cairns from Kuranda on the famous scenic rail when around 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon, a rock was hurled through the window, hitting the 5-year-old in the head. The boy suffered a fractured skull and a brain bleed and was flown to Townsville Hospital. Now, this would have been extremely distressing for his family who witnessed the entire ordeal. But thankfully tonight, he is in a stable condition, expected to make a full recovery with no permanent damage. Now, police are throwing significant resources at this, trying to track down the person or group responsible for throwing that rock, rather. Detectives are appealing for any witnesses or anyone with camera footage in the area of James and Law Streets to come forward. Sam.
Jordan Quinn in the 7 newsroom. Thank you. An unmarked police car has been rammed by a stolen silver Kia outside a home in Ellen Grove. The officers had parked in the driveway this morning when the driver tried to make a getaway through the fence, hitting the police car. After realising he was blocked in, the man then tried smashing through the side fence but became stuck. He took off on foot and tonight remains on the run. Residents of a beleaguered resort on South Stradbroke Island say they're living in fear as summer approaches. With no town water, there was little they could do to save a home that caught fire yesterday and are now worried about what happens if there's a bushfire.
Smoke over South Stradbroke Island, a building burns and there's little locals can do.
All the ceiling and the roof has collapsed and unfortunately their pet dog had passed away.
The blaze broke out yesterday afternoon at Kuren Cove, a community without basic utilities because of a complex stoush with their body corporates. No electricity, gas or town water since February last year. Residents had reached out to a neighbouring resort while waiting for fire crews from the mainland.
We don't have full fire hydrants, we don't have powerful water. If it took hold even more, possibly lives could be lost.
Those still living at Kuren Cove say they've got nowhere else to go. They're living off the grid, reliant on water tanks and generators.
Everything's overgrown, things are falling down. The wooden planks are all rotted through.
As temperatures climb, the island's remaining residents are increasingly on edge. With fuel like this littered throughout the beleaguered resort, they say a bushfire would be catastrophic.
Nobody helps. You know, we really feel like we're living in a third world country. We're 15 minutes away from the mainland and yet we've got nothing.
With the state election just 6 days away, island locals are calling on Queensland's next leader to intervene and restore the resort to its former glory.
It's not paradise anymore.
The place is just a complete another write-off. Very sad, I'm afraid.
Liam Bland, 7 News.
The Israeli army has released video of the Hamas leader who executed the October 7 terrorist attacks. This is Yahya Sinwar and his family moving into a tunnel the day before he unleashed his fighters. He'd rarely emerge afterwards, and when he did this week, Israel struck.
This was the first and last time he encountered Israeli soldiers, and he was eliminated.
Meantime, Hezbollah targeted the home of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu with a drone overnight. He wasn't home and it missed. Passengers on an Air New Zealand flight at the centre of a bomb scare say they only found out about it through social media. Federal Police swept the aircraft in Sydney but found nothing. The source of the scare remains a closely guarded secret.
Stuck on a plane, unaware they're at the centre of a bomb threat. 4 hours later, passengers finally reunite with loved ones. The Air New Zealand flight from Wellington landed in Sydney at 5:40 last night after staff on board raised the alarm.
Flight crew came around like mid-flight, opening up all the overhead lockers and just like closing them back up as if they were looking for something.
Kept well away from terminals, the A320 was isolated on the runway for more than an hour. 154 passengers told to wait in their seats without any details.
That was the intimidating part, just not really sure what was going on.
We were sitting out there on the runway, we didn't know what to expect until it came up all on social media.
I think it's probably good they handled it the way they did, because imagine the panic if they're like, oh, there's a bomb on board.
Disembarking row by row into the night, each traveller then individually screened.
Our bags were put on the floor and the dogs went around and sniffed.
We were just asked where we were coming from, identification, phone numbers.
New Zealand media reports a note found on board could have triggered the extensive security response.
But the Australian Federal Police remain tight-lipped about the source of the threat. They did confirm that after a thorough search of the aircraft, nothing suspicious was found.
Those on board left in the dark, but relieved at arrivals. Amy Clemens, 7 News.
A fed-up resident has come face-to-face with armed teens who tried kicking down the door of his Pollara home. The trio had a screwdriver, a hammer and a knife ready to break in, but they were spooked when they were spotted by Harpreet Singh.
I saw one of the kids was trying to jump through the door, but he saw me and then just said shit and then ran back to the car and they drove away.
They took off in a stolen blue Volkswagen. It's understood the trio have tried breaking into a number of homes across South Brisbane. Now for a look at the weather. Michelle, a cool change has arrived.
Yes, Sam, no sign at all today of yesterday's heat or humidity. Today's figures were much closer to average as a cool wind change settled in, and that knocked a few degrees off the maximums, with 27 in Brisbane, but only after a warm night on 20 degrees in the city. And on the Gold Coast, the temperature gauge hardly moved, with 21 to 24. We will start to warm up tomorrow though. Details soon, Sam.
I like the sound of that. Thanks, Michelle. Well, still to come, a Queensland man arrested over a 30-year-old rape cold case in Victoria. Kamala Harris amps up the star power while Donald Trump takes a vulgar swipe at his opponent. Motorcycle madness, a rider performs silly stunts on a busy southeast motorway. And the lucky Aussies who got to meet the King and Queen.
She is one of the most respected, talented and still young journalists that Australia has. She's shown that repeatedly around the world. People have seen her in hotspots, they've seen her in war zones, natural disasters, and now they're going to see her here with me.
Queensland's own acclaimed journalist Sarah Greenold joins Max Futcher.
7 News is on the cusp of something really exciting here. You're going to have two people who are committed to the news like you've never seen before in Queensland.
They don't just read the news, they report it to you.
Well, Max is a very well-respected broadcaster and journalist himself, so I think that's what is probably unique about the two of us, is that we've had a very similar background in terms of being on-the-road journos.
Two Queenslanders who covered some of the biggest stories around the world now bring their experience to you every night.
We're journos, and I will always be a journalist first and foremost.
Sarah Greenold joins Max Futcher for 7 News.
A driver has been charged, accused of mowing down a pedestrian on the Gold Coast early this morning. Liam Bland, police allege he fled the scene.
Sam, he was taken into custody just after 5 this morning after reportedly calling police to turn himself in. At just after 1 this morning, a pedestrian was struck by a silver Nissan Navara ute at Burleigh Heads. It's believed that man, a 28-year-old from Deception Bay, was crossing the road at the time. He was taken to Gold Coast University Hospital with serious injuries. The 19-year-old driver from Pimpamar has been charged with dangerous operation of a vehicle, causing grievous bodily harm and failing to remain at the scene of an accident. Sam, he'll front court in Southport next month.
Liam Bland at Broadbeach, thank you. Well, Victorian police have arrested a Queensland man over a cold case from the 1980s. It's alleged he was responsible for a sexual assault in Melbourne. The then 19-year-old girl was walking home from a night out when she was jumped. New evidence came to light in 2021, leading detectives to reopen the case. The man is facing a number of charges, including rape. Well, Kamala Harris has leaned on star power at rallies in battleground states with 15 days until the US presidential election. At a campaign event, Donald Trump made a vulgar dig at his rival and bizarrely spoke at length about a late golfing legend's manhood.
I got a feeling, can y'all hear me all right?
Pop singer Lizzo lending her voice to Kamala Harris.
And I think Mrs. Commander-in-Chief has a nice ring to it.
Helping rally support in her hometown Detroit, where early voting started in the city today.
We're going to go vote today. We're going to remind people to vote. We're going to register folks to vote.
The celeb cameos kept coming. In battleground Georgia, Usher made the Democrat the star of the show.
I love you more, but I love Kamala Harris even more.
Crisscrossing must-win states while questioning her rival's mental fitness for office.
He's becoming increasingly unstable and unhinged.
We can't stand you, you're a vice president.
While campaigning in pivotal Pennsylvania, Donald Trump ramped up the personal attacks.
This woman is crazy.
But the former president opened his rally with a detailed story about the late legendary golfer Arnold Palmer, at one point appearing to praise his genitalia.
But when he took showers with the other pros, they came out of there, they said, oh my God, that's unbelievable.
11 million Americans have already made their choice, casting their ballots early. In the United States, Miley Hogan, 7 News.
Still to come, the lucky Aussies who got to meet the monarch, what the King had to say. The Federal Treasurer opens up his prediction about the rising cost of living. An entire country in the dark following a mass blackout. And the popular Brisbane Gymnastics Centre praying we don't have a wet summer.
Households rise up against grocery prices.
The housewife means business.
A look back at the cost of living in Queensland. Flashback 7 News coming up soon.
At dinner tables and in lounge rooms tonight, some lucky Australians will be sharing stories of the day they met the King and Queen. The couple creating precious memories for excited royal watchers of all ages.
In full voice. First came the cheers, then the chants.
One more time, 3 cheers to the King!
Royal diehards knew if they wanted to attract the attention of the King and Queen, they had to fight for it.
God save the precious King!
His anthem working wonders, sparking this impromptu visit from the royal couple.
Camilla! Welcome to Australia! Oh, bless you!
It was a bit of a surprise. We didn't know we'd get that up close and personal.
A birthday Lisa Kenny will never forget.
I shook both their hands. They were so gracious. And I said to King Charles, welcome to Australia, welcome to Sydney. And he said, you're very kind, thank you.
What a birthday treat!
I know! The family have put the birthday on hold, so we can go and celebrate now.
From handshakes to hugs.
I'm still shaking. Camilla came first and she just leant forward and gave me the biggest hug. Oh. And she said, all the best. And she just looked straight into my eyes and it was just incredibly overwhelming.
Heartfelt gifts stealing the show.
Queen Camilla, I think you look really pretty in your hat and King Charles really formal in your suit.
I
gave the Queen some flowers, and she was very interested, you know, where they came from, and I grew them in my own garden.
Royalists of all ages walking away with a story to tell.
I was so excited.
Why were you so excited?
Because he was his first time.
Bursting with pride, Tszyu Mantle and his two siblings handpicked by St Thomas's Anglican Church to hand-deliver special presents.
I gave them a wallabies cricket ball. No, rugby ball.
What did they look like?
They looked very old.
The true power of the King and Queen is in the faces of the crowds. It may only be a brief minute of small talk or a quick wave, but it's the personal touch that keeps the public coming back.
I tell you why I'm excited, because he's paused his cancer treatment, and I think that's a really big deal.
Catherine White among those who staked her spot before the sun came up.
I've come prepared. That king is not going to miss me.
Have you seen King Charles and Queen Camilla before?
Only on the sales at the Opera House.
But nothing beats this. With thousands more expected to have their little piece of royal history in the days to come. Annie Puller, 7 News.
Well, Cuba's 10 million people have endured a second night without electricity. The country was plunged into darkness on Friday when its largest power plant failed. Engineers managed to restore a trickle of power before the system failed for a second time overnight. The country has been hit with weeks of rolling blackouts before this latest problem. Adding to the island nation's woes, a hurricane is due to hit in the next day or so. Well, better days are ahead. That's the Federal Treasurer's promise to Australians struggling with the cost of living. In an interview on Spotlight, Jim Chalmers claims he's winning the inflation fight, but revealed our economy did come dangerously close to recession.
The cost of living crisis has battered family budgets. Groceries, petrol, electricity, all through the roof. But now Treasurer Jim Chalmers delivers the message all Australians are waiting to hear.
The worst is behind us.
Telling 7 Spotlight tonight that inflation is now coming under control and Australian families can expect the financial pressure to finally ease.
We're still very focused on the fight against inflation, but we've made really quite substantial progress. Better days are ahead.
Underlying inflation has fallen from a peak of 7.2% almost 2 years ago to 3.4% last month. Treasury predicts it will fall below 3% in December, back within the Reserve Bank's target range.
There is light at the end of the tunnel, but there's more work to do.
This is a significant change of language as Jim Chalmers and the government now shift firmly into pre-election mode, switching to a more positive, optimistic message. Jim Chalmers also revealing for the first time how close Australia came this year to falling into recession.
If I'm honest with you, Mark, there were times where we feared that the economy would go backwards.
Government spending kept it from doing that, and only just.
If you're asking me was I worried at the time, too right I was.
The Treasurer this month also marking 4 years sober, giving up alcohol after a health scare.
I was a pretty enthusiastic drinker.
Not anymore. Mark Riley, 7 News.
And you can catch Mark Riley's full exclusive interview with Jim Chalmers on 7 News Spotlight at 8:50 tonight. Well, just ahead, a local gymnastics club keeping a nervous watch on the skies. Why it needs help to keep the rain away. The Brisbane Aviators turning heads with a hydrogen-powered plane. See the moment a reckless motorcyclist shocks drivers on the M1. And the bold plan to boost volunteering nationwide. Motorists have looked on in shock as a motorcyclist performed silly stunts on the M1. He's seen riding side saddle, standing on the seat, then lying on it.
Oh my God, he let go. He's got no hands.
The video was posted to social media with one user commenting they'd seen the same rider doing the same things before. A beloved community gymnastics club that's trained Olympians may have to close, with the facilities suffering unbelievable water damage every time it rains. Parents and coaches at the Middleton Youth Club have told 7 News they need the government to come to the rescue.
This might look like the installation of an indoor pool, but there's no swimming here.
It was pretty scary. I mean, we had all the coaches standing around holding the tarp up.
Oh, it's crazy. And I feel for my coaches. My team have to deal with this every single day.
It's what happens at one of Queensland's oldest and largest gymnastics clubs every time it rains.
Every time that the rain comes, we're running around putting buckets around the place to make sure that we're protecting our equipment.
The club has been given $2 million by council and state government for repairs, but
it's a temporary fix.
What they actually need is money for a complete rebuild.
We've got little kids in here and coaches that are prepping for the 2032 Olympics, and they are earmarked as high contenders.
The club once trained Olympic silver medalist Jai Wallace. Now there are fears classes will be cancelled, or worse, if we have a wet summer.
To be perfectly honest, there's a high chance we will close. A high chance.
Brisbane City Council has told 7 News they're working with the club and state government to deliver flood recovery and resilience works, including a roof replacement and improvements to its foundations.
It's one of our oldest clubs and we need to ensure the sustainability of the club.
So it can continue serving all 1,000 of its members into its 84th year. Samantha, 7 News.
A new campaign has been launched today to encourage young Australians to take up volunteering. Hanging Out to Help will raise awareness of the benefits and options available to 15 to 18-year-olds.
It's about helping people, it's about improving our physical environment, and it's making our communities more cohesive and more special.
More than 80% of Australia's volunteer-led organisations say they need more volunteers. Well, the rising cost of living is putting pressure on Aussie families today, but is it anything new? 50 years ago, families were feeling the pinch just the same. Tonight on Flashback, we have a look at the double-digit inflation crisis of the 70s. That story's just ahead on 7 News. It's Sport Time now with Webcke and a career crisis for an Aussie boxer.
Yes, Sam, Tszyu. Hello, everyone. Unmade in America. The son of a gun's career has hit a Russian brick wall. And he wasn't the only Aussie to take a tumble. Tszyu can forget about Las Vegas blockbusters after a devastating loss in Orlando that's left his career at a crossroads. Backroom Tszyu defended his IBF super middleweight world title with a brutal third-round stoppage, dropping Tszyu 4 times.
Tszyu, dazed and confused.
What's going through your mind? What just happened? Like, what did I get hit with?
A US world title fight with Kostya on the team had long been the dream. But right from the start, mental scars from the Fundora bloodbath resurfaced.
And he thought he was cut again.
Normally methodical and precise,
These guys are trading leather. Oh! Down goes Tszyu.
Tszyu instead tried to trade power shots with undefeated champ Bakram Murtazaliev.
Oh, down goes Tszyu. For the second time.
Floored 3 times and on wobbly legs, Tszyu barely survived round 2. A deer in the headlights with a Russian beast intent on turning his lights out.
Oh, that's a big one.
After beating the count for the 4th time, younger brother Nikita saved Tim from himself, throwing in the towel.
It is over, the unthinkable.
The brutal beatdown scuppers plans for a Vegas mega fight against Jamel Charlo and raises serious questions about whether he belongs at the elite level. The one thing that can't be questioned is his heart.
Every time I step in the ring, I'm willing to die in here. Things didn't go to plan. The better man won tonight. No excuses right there.
Everybody can be jealous of his will and what kind of warrior he is.
Cold comfort for someone who's right back to square one. Nick Market, 7 News.
Tszyu's not the only former champion to suffer a knockout blow today. The Lions lost to the Cats by 10 points and star forward Dakota Davidson to concussion. The Spearhead somehow held on to this mark in the second quarter, but failed a HIA after hitting her head on the ground.
She's just frustrated that, these things happen to her. It's her second or third concussion in about 2 years, so, it's something that we've got to be careful with.
Brisbane's first defeat since round 1 has them in danger of dropping out of the top 4 with 2 rounds remaining until the finals. Marnus Labuschagne's decision to send South Australia into bat backfired for the Bulls at Allan Border Field. Both Redbacks openers posted half centuries. Even Labuschagne's bowling was dealt with. The only spark came from 21-year-old Tom Whitney, who claimed 3 wickets on debut.
Bowls him, oh, lovely Yorker there. Drew's on his way for naught. The Bulls strike back here and Whitney gets his second.
Henry Hunt's century has SA in a strong position at 7 for 289 after day 1. While the Kangaroos are laying low, the Jillaroos are sky high, bound for Christchurch tonight. That's where both sides will chase redemption against the Kiwis next Sunday, the women boasting a major inclusion for the rematch.
Cleared for takeoff, veteran half Ali Brigginshaw will bolster an Australian spine that shined in her absence.
She was always good to go. It was more just not pushing her if she didn't need to be pushed.
She's a great player and definitely need her experience and leadership going up against the Kiwis.
Last year's Pacific Championship final was a 2-fold green and gold disaster. The Jillaroos and Kangaroos crushed by the Kiwis.
Been at the forefront of our mind all year, especially now that we're in camp together, so definitely looking to get one back on them.
This was no omen for the Comals, who crashed Fiji's homecoming party overnight. The Barty hosting their first test in 24 years, trailing 18-0 at the break.
Nagama's chasing! It'll be in vain!
Cowboys prospect Robert Derby pinching a pair of wayward passes from Viliami Kikau.
Turns him inside out like a sock and passes back inside for Nene McDonald.
Dolphins young gun Kurt Donahue failed to ace his chances for Fiji in a winning return to the coach's box for Papua New Guinea mentor Jason Demetriou.
We didn't really get together as a team till Wednesday, so what they've done over the last 4 or 5 days is pretty special.
Mitch Crone, 7 News.
One of the great motor racers of all time, Marc Marquez, skidded on his own visor tear at the start line, fell out of the top 10, then charged back to beat championship leader Jorge Martin in a classic duel at Phillip Island. It's the 6-time MotoGP champion's 4th Australian Grand Prix win. Sydney 19-year-old Sienna Aegis finished 3rd in Moto2.
It's not been the easiest of seasons, and to get my first podium today, I'm actually a bit emotional.
He didn't quite nail the celebration lap, but took it like the future champ he's touted to be. Late in the Formula One sprint in Austin.
Oh, they must have touched, surely. That was almost the end of the race for both Leclerc and for Norris.
Lando Norris went on to finish 3rd behind championship leader Max Verstappen, who won for the first time since June. Qualifying ended early when George Williams went into the wall, handing Norris pole position from Mad Max. Oscar Piastri qualified 5th. And that's our Sunday Sport.
Excellent. Thank you, Webby. Well, the sky's the limit for a Brisbane aviation business developing some of the world's first zero-emissions passenger planes. The hydrogen electric aircraft will take to the skies for the first time next year, with hundreds of millions of dollars in orders on the way. I went along for a look. This is Bonnie and Clyde. They may not look like it yet, but they're the future of flying.
It'll be the first time that a human-powered hydrogen electric aircraft has flown in Australia, and it'll be a real record-breaking moment for Australian aviation.
Clyde is fitted with the zero-emission fuel cell technology that uses green liquid hydrogen for electric propulsion. He's been used for all the ground trials, and next year Bonnie will take to the sky for the first time with a pilot on board.
We're bringing to market a fuel cell that's 6 times lighter than anything else out there, and that allows us to unlock the potential of hydrogen for long-range flight.
Stralis has been developing the cutting-edge technology at Brisbane Airport and has the world watching. Nominated for a Lord Mayor's Business Award on October 25, they've got $260 million worth of planes in the pipeline. 11 different airlines have already ordered 40 of these 15-seat planes. They'll start hitting the sky within the next 3 years. But for this technology, the sky isn't the limit.
We're looking at mining vehicles, long-haul trucking, marine applications, and even portable power on the ground.
And the best bit, the only byproduct is water.
So clean that you can drink it.
Cheers to that. Well, the cost of living crunch is nothing new. After the break in Flashback, stretching the household budget in the 60s and 70s.
and it's currently 21 degrees in the city. Following a cool change, I'll have the forecast next.
Inflation is driving the cost of everything up, but it's by no means a modern phenomenon. Tonight in Flashback, a look back at the rising cost of living. The prices of groceries in the 70s might look cheap, but the struggle for families was just as tough.
For some reason or other, it appears that Queenslanders are definitely being slugged when it comes to groceries.
It's a familiar line, although grocery shopping wasn't always equal opportunity.
Today we took the question to the women of Brisbane, since they are more directly concerned. Does Queensland need price control?
Well, there should be price control on most of the grocery lines and things like that, things that you buy for children.
Inflation in the early 70s had hit double figures.
So the question is, why are Queenslanders paying more?
It's been mainly because we've been trying to give ourselves more income than we can really afford to give ourselves, and this has pushed up costs.
Economic jargon didn't help women trying to make ends meet.
In Ipswich today, another protest against rising prices.
Vilma Ward launched CARP, Citizens Against Rising Prices. She led boycotts on pricey supermarkets.
This is what we need, action to get these people moving. The housewife means business.
I'm the housewife and I buy your products and they're too damn dear.
In the 70s, a survey of changing grocery prices got mixed reactions.
Today at Inala, I asked both shopkeepers and shoppers how they felt about the survey.
I think it's a lot of rot.
Do you believe this survey is a lot of rot?
I certainly don't. It's definitely needed. Definitely, and there should be a regular check made on all these shop prices.
In 1987, Brisbane MP Elaine Darling started a price watch group, putting pressure on big supermarkets.
In fact, of all the stores surveyed in Australia, the cheapest was in her own electorate, Coles New World in Lutwyche.
That pressure results in a lowering of prices.
Last month, Coles and Woolies were called out for inflating, then dropping prices in fake discounts. Price vigilantes in the 80s were a wake-up to that.
People who are going to be monitoring the prices in grocery stores, as I said, are housewives, and they are experts on knowing what are specials and what aren't.
Weather now, Michelle. There was a treat for stargazers last night.
There was, Sam. A celestial visitor was back, captured just after sunset at Muggera Dam, a comet bright enough to see with the naked eye. It is still visible for a couple of weeks, but it's now slowly fading into the dark depths of space. And you may need to go searching for clear skies. Clouds moved in today, clearing out this afternoon though. And temperatures were much cooler, with tops in the 20s following a warm night. On the satellite, a trough stretching across the width of Queensland, which brought yesterday's heat in the southeast, has now moved north. Behind the trough, a ridge of high pressure is coming from a system in the Tasman Sea, bringing today's cooler southeasterly wind change, and that should continue tomorrow. Interstate tomorrow, Sydney could pick up a shower at Darwin, the chance of a thunderstorm, and otherwise looking dry, with Adelaide warming up to 30 degrees. Back to Queensland, Mount Isa is headed for 39 along the coast, tops in the low 30s, and the chance of a light shower for Mackay. Further south, possible showers between Hervey Bay and Gympie. Emerald has the chance of an afternoon thunderstorm, and Longreach remaining hotter than usual, heading for 40 degrees. Temperatures elsewhere, though, are remaining much closer to average. In the southeast, patches of drizzle could affect the Sunshine Coast in the morning. It'll be a partly cloudy day for most spots. Sunny, though, in Surfers Paradise, with 15 to 26 degrees on the Gold Coast. In the suburbs, looking warmer, tops of 28 or 29 mostly, then a degree or two cooler along the coast, Manly 16 to 27 degrees. Out on the water, seas around a metre, with southerly winds turning southeasterly at 15 to 20 knots in the late morning. And in Brisbane tomorrow, a mostly sunny day with 17 to 28 degrees and sunset right on news time at 6 o'clock. Looking ahead, it should remain dry, with tops of 28 on repeat here for a few days before Thursday heats up. In Ipswich, the minimums drop this week following some warmer nights lately, then expect tops in the 30s for the working week. On the Gold Coast, partly cloudy days from Wednesday, but no rain is expected until Friday or Saturday. And on the Sunshine Coast, plenty of dry patches, but showers are possible right through the week, even on Wednesday and Thursday. And Sam, it is a bit early to be sure, but at this stage it looks like the southeast could see a few drizzles on Saturday for Election Day.
Oh, thank you, Michelle. Hope not. Well, that's all for us this Sunday. Thanks for your company. We'll have updates throughout the evening, but for now, from all the team, good night.
The 7 News app will give you the news you want. Download now.